Chag Sameach. I was once walking around the neighborhood in Los Angeles where I used to live with my father, and there was a Shabbat afternoon, and in this neighborhood, Pico Robertson is very Jewish. There's always lots of people walking back and forth to shul, to meals. And so we saw someone who we'd prayed with a few times at a shul we used to go to, a man who'd received an Emmy, this is Los Angeles, for writing for The Simpsons, and a real character. And so he saw us, huge smile on his face, came over to us, and suddenly started talking about the gematria, the numerical value of this in the parsha, and you mix it with this and this whole thing with numbers in the hundreds and hundreds, and finally is equal to something, some great theme of the parsha. Didn't say anything else, just huge smile on his face and said, good Shabbos, and walked away. But this is because Torah is meant to be shared with other people, right? Torah is meant to, you get inspired and you want to give it over. And it's meant to be a joyful part of life, something that inspires you, that gives you something about, it can be a discovery in the parsha, but really, or this discovery about life, something, an insight, a look upon these journeys we've all been given, the purpose of all of it. And so our sages, the way they sometimes talk about a little insight into Torah is that it's like a spark. Last week I was talking to a family member. Several weeks before that, it's an extended family member who hadn't spoken to, and they'd said something to me which I found really powerful, and it enlightened a part of life, and one of our common family members, and I'd been holding it on. And then last week, I was sharing with them, and inadvertently, they said I'd said something that really stuck with them. They held on to it and mentioned it, the other conversation, right? Many of us have these experiences with people we are close to. We inspire each other, we give each other insights on life. And according to the Hasidim, this is because when we do this, we're connecting to what they call the supernal Torah. The supernal Torah that the Ari talks about is not the physical Torah, the written Torah we have, but it's the DNA of the universe. It's what our Torah comes from. It's what our ancestors millennia ago were able to receive from that DNA of the universe. But when we hear a spark of true inspiration that awakens something in us that's connected to something, a truth of the universe, something that was dormant until then, and suddenly it's awakened and is real for us, and suddenly we see it, while before we didn't. And so Rabbi Yitzchak Berditchev, Hasidic master, he says, this is what's actually behind that midrash, that before the Torah was offered to the Jewish people, it was offered to all the nations of the world. And he says, actually what happened then is that in every nation, there was a reshima, an impression of the Torah that was left in every nation, a little actual spark of that heavenly Torah in the nations of the world, to be awakened at a different, later time. In his mind, when they speak to a Jewish person, suddenly that insight is awoken. But the way they come to see it is that in this world, scattered throughout our lives, are these insights that are to be gathered or mined or brought to bear fruit. This is what Rabbi Avraham Yitzchak Kook says of this process, the first chief rabbi of pre-state Israel. The voice of oneness is always calling out to us from the highest realms of holiness, from the source of all knowledge. We need only listen to its words. We each hear the supernal voice according to the level of our purity and refinement. The more we are able to listen and receive its call, the more our path forward will be illuminated, and the walls between God and us will come tumbling down, so the clear, direct light and call from the source of life will enter into our hearts and minds. And sometimes, right, these sparks that come from places we expect, shul, hopefully, or the mountains, the Mount Sinai's of the world, but they can also come from very unexpected places. There's a piece of Talmud that relates, the Rabbi Joshua ben Levi meets the prophet Elijah standing by the entrance of the cave of Shimon Bar Yochai, and he asks him, well, when is Mashiach coming? The question that's been on our minds for 2,000 years. And so he says, go and ask him yourself. Okay, so where is he sitting? And he says, at the gates of Rome. Right? Sometimes Torah is found in the most unlikely places, in the place of Rome, the pagan and imperial center that subjugated Israel. But maybe there too one can find in those really difficult dark places can be found the Torah that we need to hear, that will illuminate the way forward. Another unlikely place we see in the very story of the giving of a Torah, we read it in the Parsha every year, right preceding the story of the giving of a Torah is the story of Jethro, of Yitro, where Moses, coming back from the plagues in Egypt with the people, suddenly sees his father-in-law and tells him everything that happened, and they embraced, and the plagues. And then Jethro notices that Moses is up all day and night hearing the people's cases, and he says, "What are you doing?" And it's Jethro who helps create a whole system of judges to carry out the leadership. So these sparks of wisdom, these sparks of revelation are part of our journey in the world. And Rabbi Natan of Nemirov says, well, this is actually what we celebrate on this holiday of Shavuot. And even all the studying we're doing is really to remind us of how vast that study is. So everything we learn is but a drop in that vast ocean of Jewish knowledge and wisdom, almost limitless through all the contributions over millennia. But it's really about celebrating that journey, our outlook of trying to come to more understanding about ourselves, about the universe, about being Jewish, about being just a human being. And on the second day of Chag too, as we commemorate Yizkor and we think about life itself and the people who from our lives who departed, what they taught us about life and continue to teach us, we also connect to that millennia-old Jewish search for wisdom and purpose. Chag Sameach.